Welcome to Art and Prayer. I am Rob McPherson, and today we are joined by artist and author Jen Norton. I saw, Jen, in your webpage that one of your goals is to get people to pause and listen.
Yes.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that.
Well, gosh, it's such a fast-paced world. And I think, I was really shy as a kid. And so I always have this sense in me of like, oh, I need to say something now. Like if someone asks me a question, I've had to learn myself. If someone asks me a question that I don't have an immediate answer to because it's already something I've dealt with, it's okay to say, let me get back to you. Let me stop and think this through. But that's a learned skill. And I think it's a learned skill for a lot of us, especially women. And so I guess for me, making the art is the pause because if whatever I'm painting, say the Pentecost piece, okay, we can read it in the Bible. It takes 5 seconds and you kind of have an image in your head. But when you're painting something, it might take you 2 days or 2 weeks or whatever. And I paint acrylic because I have to change my mind a lot. It does not matter how much I plan out something in the process, it's going to change. And that's a good thing because that's God, that's the divine side coming through my hands that I maybe not entirely conscious of. It's just I'm reacting to it with a feeling until I get something that I like, that I feel proud about. Um, and so it's that you can't make that quick. You can people make AI art all the time now, but it's a different thing. It's not the same. And so for me, I'm adamant that I have to. It's where I think I shine the most, and it's where I think God can speak to me the most is when I stop trying to run around and you know present myself as something or have the right answer, and I go, okay, hold on, let me think this through. And art for me gives me that pause. And so whether you're making the art like I do or whether you're looking at the art, I think there's opportunity for that pause on either end. It's a conversation.
I'm curious about how you kind of hinted at that God may be leading you either consciously or unconsciously at moments. Have you ever felt like you had an insight into faith while you were painting?
I think I think the key is it just takes me deeper into the story. And so the first piece I painted that was like overtly Catholic was a Hail Mary piece. It's got a moon in the background. And at the time, I was very I looking back, I realized I was trying to be empowered myself and I was trying to, just I don't know, feel like I was something. And there's a lot of spirituality around women with the moon and the mystery and the, all these sort of, I'll say pagan things or I don't know, new age things or whatever. And it's all in the milieu of, where we live. And I'm in California, so there's a lot of it. And and so, those paths were there and it was all a mystery. And I started painting that one. And that one was directly in response to me picking up the rosary, which is our prayer to Mary that leads us to Jesus. We aren't praying to Mary directly, but we're praying for her as a fellow human who clearly knew Christ better than the rest of us to lead us forward. And I was really dealing with something big in my life. And that, in the praying of that, I really heard Mary's voice kind of saying, let it be to this situation. Like, not don't help out, but my son's got this. Stop trying to orchestrate it yourself. This is kind of where it comes from. So I painted that piece for me.
What inspired you to paint Pentecost?
Um, well, it's such a fascinating story. I think I'm trying to think what I was thinking at the time because I don't remember, but I've put Mary, the Mother of God, right in the center there.
Yep.
And you just think about the story. Their her son and their teacher and their friend has been brutally murdered. This man, okay, they kind of understood him as divine, but it's still being in the process of being fulfilled. So I can forgive them for not seeing the whole story here. Um, has promised these things and yet he's gone, right? And after this, they've seen him now for 50 days or whatever, but then he's now gone to heaven. Now, what does that mean? We're gone, we've lost you again. And then so they're hiding in this room and they're afraid maybe the same thing's going to happen to them. And then the Holy Spirit comes in this whoosh of sound. I think it's described as this big wind, and I have a big tree above our house. And when it's again California, we don't get hurricanes usually so far, but there have been some pretty big winds where I'm just like, oh God, it's terrifying. And so to hear this, um, kind of wind coming, got to add even more to the fear. And so I wanted the dynamism of that fear. And part of this for me was just how do I paint flames? So they're, they look like flames, but with my style. So there's the color theory stuff going on there. And then I really was trying to connect with like Mary because now I don't think she was the only woman in the room, but clearly she's a very much center of the story here because as the mother of Christ. And to be able to withstand that fear and comfort these men, which we kind of believe she did as they went out. First of all, the whole when they got the whole spirit there, they all were then ready to switch from fear to action to mission. To be able to watch, even if she knew the details, even if she was understood what was going to happen and why, to watch your child be brutally murdered in the way that he was, and to still be able to hold peace for these people, these men and their accompaniers that were going to now have to go out into the world and proclaim Christ in a very dangerous situation. Like that, there's a lot there. Um, that if that doesn't make you feel small. And so, and to know all these guys felt small, and yet God gave them what they needed to go out and to withstand what they withstood and all of that. I think it's a pretty deep story. So, and I do it in a pretty colorful, happy way, but there's a lot there.
Well, and I think in some ways the flames capture that though, because flames aren't and they're not necessarily a safe image,
No.
right? There's something about fire that is frightening at the same time as that which creates or changes things or has power. There's still something frightening about that, and I think the flames help, at least in the way you've done them. Some people they end up with these little teeny tiny
Yeah.
flames.
No, I wanted them
Yours are like
consuming.
all consuming, so they're the the flames take on some of that. This is a dramatic event, a dramatic
Mm,
change filled with all those kinds of fears.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, flames, when humans figured out how to work with fire, we could then cook food. So there's life-giving thing there. And in forest, things begin to grow again after a fire. And again, California, I live very close to some fires that have happened
mm,
in the Santa Cruz forest and Napa, and we had family down in the Los Angeles region that lost their homes in the Palisades fires, and um, yeah, and it could be so devastating, and it changes your life for better or for worse, whether it's just warming you up or it's burning down your house. It's changing something about your environment. Something massive changed here.
we will come back and talk to Jen more after our time of contemplation, but let's shift ourselves into an awareness of God's presence. Slow ourselves down, relax our body, be comfortable, and let's listen as we center ourselves in Acts 2, verses 1 through 4. When the day of Pentecost arrived, they all met in one room. Suddenly they heard what sounded like a violent rushing wind from heaven. The noise filled the entire house in which they were sitting. Something appeared to them that seemed like tongues of fire. These separated and came to rest on the head of each one. They were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other languages as she enabled them. What thoughts or emotions does this passage evoke in you? Let's look at the painting. Look first at the people. What do you notice about them? Now look at the flames. In our time with Jen, we talked about the fire as consuming. And yet, when we consider Moses with the burning bush, it is consumed but not destroyed. What does it mean to be consumed by the Holy Spirit's presence? Where do you see peace in the painting, even though it is active? Ask God to pour out the Holy Spirit upon you. What words does the Holy Spirit bring to you today? look back at the painting, what details do you notice that help reveal more of the Holy Spirit's message for you? Focus on one thing and consider it. Keep listening and looking while remaining open to God. Set aside your words and simply be. Be still with God. I invite you to finish up your time of contemplation. To finish our time today, let's hear a little more from Jen Norton. Are there specific things that you hope people, when they look at your artwork, that they think about, or that you hope that they listen for? What kind of reaction are you hoping people have?
It's art is just a language, and I'm just hoping it provides another dimension into the truths that Christ left for us and is with us still today. And off it just I'm searching for truth. There's a lot of information floating by us every day, and a lot of influencers telling us this, that, the other thing, and some of it's true and some of it isn't. How do you know? So try to stay as close to the story in my Bible as possible. I'm not trying to change anything, but I put my own colorful expression as a person who grew up in the desert Southwest with a lot of color. And I've got an art degree, but not a ton of, like, I mean, I used to kind of fall asleep in art history class, so a ton of, old master knowledge in my head anymore. It used to be there. I would get out of those classes with an A, but gone now. And I'm just responding. So I want other people to respond to the stories as well from a heart perspective and go, oh, yeah, this means something to me too. This isn't just a story from 2,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago. These stories are still living and moving in us today. And these are my stories too. Like, where do I fit in it? So I want that conversation. And for me, the color and the texture are emotional components of a painting versus, say, value and other things. So I'm trying to connect to people. Well, I'm not even trying. I'm hoping they connect to my work through that and go, well, gee, maybe I should read that story again and see if there's something deeper. So essentially, Visio Divina.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I think uh, in many ways, um, what you're expressing is the hope that people will take a moment and listen to God through the work.
yeah, exactly.
And that can be with their heart, that can be with color, that can be with, like you said, texture. We don't always have a language of words to
Right.
express everything. It's one of the things that I really appreciate about being able to use art is um, sometimes we're able to then speak in a language with God that may not be a verbal language. It may just be a response from seeing. And I do hope that people take a lot of time to listen too. I mean, that's really
Mhm.
the goal, is to help people to discover that prayer can be two-sided.
Yeah,
That it doesn't have to just be chattering at God. It can be
yeah,
listening to God too.
yeah. Well, I think sometimes we don't recognize the languages God speaks. In the Pentecost piece, um, the tongues of fire come down, and everybody gets the gift of something, and then everybody understands each other even though they're different languages. Well, there's a lot going on there, and yet it's one God that's doing it. And and I look back at my life, and as a child, art was a lifeline. It gave me something to do in solitude because I was terrified. I was so shy. I was terrified of other people. There were things in my home that scared me, and I mean, I was well cared for and everything, but art was like, I wasn't doing anything consciously. I wasn't trying to be an artist. Art was something I enjoyed doing because I could do it on my own, and it carried me forward and it gave me notoriety later and it gave me a career after that. And then it gave me like a way to struggle but still justify myself. And 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 then now it's like I get to talk about what I've learned, really, and I get to still keep going forward because there's no end to the depth. That's the cool thing about God.
So if people want to learn more about you or see your artwork or even maybe buy some of your artwork, where would they go?
So my main website is jennortonartstudio.com, all one word. And from there, you can hook into, I have different platforms that I have my art on, like Fine Art America and Etsy and some things on Zazzle. I have two books that I've written with Ave Maria Press. Those are both in my Etsy shop and Amazon and Ave Maria Press. So those are out there as well.
I hope that you found yourself filled with the Holy Spirit through this time of loving connection and contemplation. Please join me again. Until next week, be blessed.